amazing. He is an amazing person, a brand ambassador who truly exemplifies what it means to scale new heights each and every single time. Do join me in welcoming the one and only Francis Kong.
Ladies and gentlemen, you and I are at the very threshold of scaling new heights. Well, what do I mean? I'm going to explain, and I want you to listen to me carefully. The pandemic changes the entire rules of the game. You know, as a business consultant, I've always been asked this question. And the question goes this way: is this pandemic thingy, is this an interruption or is this a disruption? You know what? Ever since the lockdown until today, my answer has remained the same. And I'm going to tell you what it is. You know, the funny thing about this is that some speakers are still calling this pandemic a VUCA situation. Now, the VUCA world has been introduced to us 4 to 5 years ago, and I was presenting this to you. Those of you who have been with USANA, you know this. Maybe about 4 to 5 years ago, I've been saying what a VUCA is. You know, VUCA, for the benefit of those who are listening to the first time, refers to a military term that they use in warfare. V stands for volatile, U stands for uncertainty, C stands for complex, and A stands for ambiguity or ambiguous. We are now beyond this. Now listen, VUCA consciousness happened when the whole world was slowly transitioning into the digital transformation. You have to look at that word slowly. Why? You know, we were talking about AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, the fourth industrial civilization. Do you remember that? And don't forget this very term, the digital transformation. Haven't you noticed? Not many people are talking about that anymore. Why? Because COVID-19 happened. And then the question comes into mind. COVID-19 has accelerated this transformation. And what we are doing now is a great proof of this. We would normally be meeting together in MOA, in the convention center, in SMX, and so forth and so on. Look, now we have to change methods. This is why we have to be aware. Is COVID-19 an interruption or a disruption? My answer has always been the same: neither. COVID-19 is a reset. It is like the whole world happens to be a computer hard disk, then it went into a rebooting system. And you and I are now going back to a world that is totally unrecognizable and different from the world we came from just a few months ago. So what are we having now? Well, consider this. Digital now is the new default. Remember that. And this is why I said the opportunities are ripe and open for us to scale new heights, to explore and exploit opportunities that await us. As I keep on saying, the countless webinars I've been doing almost every day, COVID-19 is an unprecedented event. An unprecedented event brings in unprecedented challenges and problems. But an unprecedented event also brings in unprecedented opportunities. Depends on how you play it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is now the time and opportunity for entrepreneurship. Now, where am I going? Why am I saying this? Before COVID, there were too many people sitting on the fences. They were half thinking, should I do the USANA business? I have my day job. Should I put more energy and attention into this business? A side hustle ko yun eh. Perhaps when I retire from my job, then I will seriously look into the USANA business. Others do not have to wait until they retire from their jobs. They have been made to retire earlier. Others wake up one morning, their jobs are gone. Well, the term job security is now in question. But things are different now these days, are they not? But you need to listen to me. If you are joining USANA for the first time, then congratulations. This is a very vibrant and dynamic organization, And the culture is totally different from the traditional businesses that you may have come from. This also means you have not yet attended the previous seminars and trainings I have given to this organization. But for those of you who are veterans, that's another way of saying, medyo may edad ka na. I'm just kidding. Those of you who are veterans, you are the professionals. These are the ones who have experienced all those incentive trips, these bonuses, made tons of money. These are the people who have grown their network. These are the ones who have gone through my talks and trainings. And that is what I want you to understand. You have already graduated from being a business person, and you are now an entrepreneur. So what am I trying to say? You are no longer under this amateur status. You are now an expert. You are a professional. And this is the most important time for us to consider entrepreneurship and not just to be in business. Well, there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and a business person. In my past events, I have shown you the difference. Perhaps some other time I can bring them now again. But now, today, I'm going to do something totally different. I have been a businessman for so long and for so many years. But for the last 15 years of my professional career, I have graduated from being in business to being in entrepreneurship. When I began as an amateur, I was doing business. Now that I've graduated into becoming an entrepreneur, I have become an expert and have become a professional. I am going to show you the massive differences. So what is the difference between an amateur and a professional? Well, one day I was with the 3 women in my life. Now, don't get any ideas. When I say 3 women, that means my wife and my 2 daughters. And we were strolling in Rockwell Power Plant. And during a lazy Sunday afternoon, normally when we go to the power plant or we go to a mall, I would go on my way and do my own shopping, and they'll do theirs. Now, it's not true that men hate shopping. That's not true at all. I love shopping. In fact, shopping is therapeutic. And I'm always under intensive care. But I love shopping. This time, maybe I felt a little lazy. Maybe I don't want to spend. And so I was with them. And then they all entered a beauty cosmetic shop. I'm not sure whether that's what you call them. And I was with them, so I stood by the door. And I was watching them. And they started taking out all these foundations and lipsticks. And they were so excitedly sharing ideas and giggling and laughing and putting them on their wrists, some on their faces. And then they got so excited. Now watch this. I haven't got the faintest idea what they were doing. Why? For me, all of those stuff, they all look the same. And then I realized one thing. The 3 women in my life are all professionals, and they are experts when it comes to beauty products. And what about me? I was an amateur. I only understood the business, but beyond that, I don't understand anything at all. So what is the main difference? The professionals are experts, and they can tell the difference between this shade and that shade, this fragrance from that other fragrance, the effect of this one on the other effect, one shade of red versus another shade of red, and so forth and so on. I was an amateur, and I could not. Therefore, the difference between the professional and the amateur is knowing the nuances and the details. Let me repeat that. The difference between the professional and the amateur is the knowing of the nuances and the details. And then you can spot the difference, and you will realize all businesses are not the same. The details of how they do business, their behaviors, their attitude, the values they stand for, the way they handle their people, the way they handle their money, the way they handle their family relationship, the way they relate to other people in the company. They're not the same. There's a difference between the amateurs and the professionals. These nuances and details spell the difference between an amateur and a professional. Now, understand this. Everybody starts out as an amateur. I did. Everybody starts out as a business person. We did, and we do. But the amateur graduates into being an expert, knowing the nuances and the details, and thus become a professional and an expert. The businessman now becomes an entrepreneur. When you think of yourself as doing a USANA business, at the start, that's a wonderful thing to do. But because of the training, the learning, the experience of doing business, you now graduate into becoming a professional. You are now an entrepreneur. You know, the beauty of this industry is there seems to be unlimited training. Why? It's the nature, it's the DNA of the industry. You want to train the people so that they grow. And then when the people grow, they grow the business. Now, let us take a look at the difference between an amateur and a professional. Number one, para sa mga amateurs, they stop when they achieve something. Kaya this industry has shown us stories and stories of people who earn money pagkatapos relax na sila. Why? Because there's residual income. They don't have the energy, they don't have the passion, they don't have the fire anymore. Para sa kanila, okay na ako kasi naghirap na ako nung araw eh. They're amateur. But take a look at the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs understand the initial achievement is just the beginning. And then there's a process. There's so much going on, and there's so much more that they can achieve. Next difference. The amateurs have a goal. But the professionals, they have a process. Why? Yung amateur, basta kumita lang ako ng mga 2 million, okay na yan. Pero the professional, hindi, may proseso tayo eh. There's a system in this business. It's not all arts. There's a science here. Kaya they take the discipline and the diligence to understand the system and how it works. For the amateur, they think they are good at everything. Pero yung professional, they understand their circles of competence. Look, the professional understand this very well. You and I are all experts, but only in different subject matters. Pero yung amateur, yung business person, ang feeling lang niya, I know everything. Ako lang nakakaalam. Pero yung professional entrepreneur understands, teka muna, there are topics wherein I do not understand and there are people who are smarter than me and then I can learn from them and we can work together. Next, the amateur value isolated performance, but the professionals value consistency. Hindi lang ito, nakascore ako. Yung, bumenta na ako this year. You know, all those gems of recognition from ruby to diamond to whatever. Pero naman yung professionals, dapat consistent tayo eh. We will continue to become entrepreneurs and because we are professionals, this is not a one-time event. And you don't slacken off. In fact, you create the momentum to achieve greater things. Next, the amateur, they give up at the first sign of trouble and assume their failures. Ayoko na. Ang hirap naman itong industriya to. Ang hirap makabenta. But the professionals see failure as part of the path to growth and mastery. Success and failure belong to the same equation. You succeed, you got to take care of your success, maintain it. If not, you're going to fail. You fail, you recover, you learn from it. It now provides you with the tools and the equipping for you to become stronger and wiser, and now you're going to be experiencing more success. It's the same part of the equation. Para sa mga amateur, they don't have any idea that improves the odds of achieving good outcomes. They don't know. Para sa kanila, swertihan lang yan. O kaya, hard work. Listen. Whenever I hear successful people say, the secret to my success is because I work very hard. That's not fair. there are other people who work harder than you, but then they cannot achieve the same kind of height that professionals do. But then take a look at what the professionals do. They do because they keep on learning and they keep on growing. They understand that it is a process of personal growth, a process of getting ideas, a process of teaching, a process of learning, a process of asking questions, a process of self-education. Well, the famous business philosopher Jim Rohn says, you get a formal education, you can earn a living. But self-education now earns you a fortune. Next, an amateur shows up to practice to have fun. In other words, when you take a look at basketball players, they show up in the practice because they're having fun, having scrimmage and everything. And then the professional realized that what happens in practice will also happen in games. That's why I have seen the people in this industry for so long. Oh, they attend events because there are raffle prizes, there are those rallies, and they shout and they enjoy it, and they laugh together. It's so fun. But look at the professionals. They understand. Kung ano yung nangyayari dyan mga events niya, kung ano yung nangyayari din sa mga training niya, yun ang pupulutin ko, yun yung mangyayari when the actual game starts. There's a big difference in between. Next. The amateur is focused on identifying their weaknesses and trying to improve them. But look at the professionals. Their professionals focus on their strengths and on finding people who are strong where they are weak, and then they strengthen their strength even more. In other words, we are experts, but only in different subject matters. If you try your best to improve your weakness, the best thing that you can arrive to or arrive at is average. You can be good, and average is not acceptable. Those of you who have been in my training, you understand what I'm trying to say. If you're average, you're invisible. If you're average, you're passing grade. If you're passing grade, you're 75%. No one loves people who are average. They want outstanding. And so if you're a professional, you focus on your strength, you strengthen it either more, and then you grow, you leverage on your strength. So what do you do with your weaknesses? You outsource your weakness because your weakness could be somebody's strength. You look at your team and then you appreciate each individual strength and the contribution they can give. And that's what makes you a leader. You're a professional. Next, the amateurs think knowledge is power. Oh, but the professional thinks that no, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom and understanding. So what do? They pass on wisdom and advice. They don't keep it for themselves. Next, the amateurs focus on being right. Hindi, yan ang tama. Dapat yan ang gawin ko eh. But the professional is focused on getting the best outcome. Sometimes, even something that was wrong can contribute to better outcome as long as you know the process. That's why the process is important. But being right all the time can also limit you into that particular paradigm and that tiny little space that you're going to hold on to. Meanwhile, the whole world now continues to change and you become irrelevant. Now you begin to see the difference between an amateur and a professional. We're going to continue. I still have a few choice items left. Next, the amateurs think good outcomes are the result of their brilliance. Magaling kasi ako eh. Diba? When this industry was still in its juvenile and immature stage, you can see and identify people thinking na pinalaki ko kasi ito dahil sa galing ko eh. Pinagaling ko ito kasi sa brilliance ko. But now the amateur understands that outcomes are the result of effort and team contribution. Hindi yun dahil ikaw magaling. You have to understand now, kung hindi naman nandun yung support, yung opisina nagsusupport sa'yo, yung mga back office support na nandiyan dyan, hindi ka naman makakarating dun sa pwesto mong yan eh. See? There's a difference between an amateur and a professional, isn't it? Next, the amateur focused on the short term. Anong gusto natin makuha ngayon? Anong gusto kong mangyari ngayon? Oh man, but the professional plays the long game. They can see the picture far ahead of time. The amateur makes decisions in committees, so there is no one person responsible if things go wrong. Hindi, pag-usapan natin yan. Oh, ito. So that when there's something wrong, the blame is equally distributed. But the professional makes decisions as individuals but accepts responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that he manipulates and commands all the attention in the presence, but he gets and gathers the contribution of the team members, but eventually it is the leader who will have to make the decision. And the buck stops here. Accountable and responsible for the decision. So, ito yung magic formula. The amateur, when they succeed, they get all the credit and the glory. When something doesn't work, they spread the blame. But the professional reverse yan. Pag pumutok, naging successful, naging maganda, gives the credit to the team. Pero pag may nangyari, grabs the responsibility for himself or herself. Very different. Next. The amateur blames others. The professional accepts responsibility. That's part of my presentation. Next, the amateur shows up inconsistently. If it's convenient, I'll show up. Pero if not, you cannot even count on my regular attendance. But the professional shows up every day. Hands-on, the operations, heads in the numbers, understands the nuances, the details of what's happening in business. The amateur goes fast. The amateur wants to go faster. Instant validation, instant gratification. Ngayon na, dali, bilis, bilis. The professional understands the importance of speed, but they don't just go faster, they go farther and they go further as well. The amateur goes with the first idea that comes into their head. The professional realized that the first idea is rarely the best idea. Now, I'm going to throw this idea to the team and we're going to work it out and we're going to see fine-tune, supplement it, argue against it, take a look at the contribution and let's find out until we have a polished idea that is more possible and probable to gain success. And I'm going to give you the last one. Certainly, this is not the last of everything, but for our time together, I'm going to give you the last one. The amateur thinks in terms of absolute. Yung bang, hindi, either ito o ito. Yan lang yun. Wala nang iba. It's either we're right and they're wrong. The professional does not think in terms of absolute. They think in terms of probabilities. They will think na, what if yung idea naman kaya niya, baka naman tumama yan. What if itong policy, instead na dilalabanan natin yan, baka naman makita natin yung merit dun sa policy niya. They always test for probability. In my many years of doing entrepreneurship, I have never shut down ideas, no matter how weird they are. I will always entertain them. When suppliers and vendors come to me, I don't immediately say, no, this product is not for us. I will always say, ano kaya mapupulot natin dito? You always think in terms of probabilities. And that's why people say, how come, Francis, you have so many ideas and you are so creative? I don't generate my own ideas. I just get myself exposed to so many ideas. And then that provides me with enough options to do critical thinking. Here's the conclusion. This is the time for entrepreneurship. This is not just the time about doing business. You have to graduate from becoming a business person to becoming an entrepreneur. You have to graduate from becoming a established amateur, because some people remain amateur for the rest of their lives, but you have to graduate into becoming a professional. And with all of the distinctive differences that represent you, you might begin to understand that these are the necessary steps we need to adopt in order to scale new heights. Because if you remain an amateur, You will always be happy getting what you've always been getting, and you will fail to explore and exploit future opportunities. What is the purpose of doing business anyway? This is the way a business person will think. To make a profit. No, no, no. An entrepreneur thinks differently. The purpose of doing business is not to make a profit. Whether you make a profit or you suffer a loss, those are outcomes. But the purpose of doing business is to be able to provide solutions to meet needs. And when we do our job correctly, we are rewarded with profit. It's a deeper perspective because that's how professionals think. And therefore, we always welcome needs. Why? Where do needs come from? Needs come from problems. And when there's a problem, it creates needs. And when there are needs, it opens up opportunities for us to provide solutions. And when we do and provide solutions, what are we having? We're having business as an entrepreneur. You see the process now? Next. The purpose of making a business, doing business, if you think that just to make a profit, earning money, that is it, well, that is not so deep. That is the mindset of an amateur. But the entrepreneur now goes a lot deeper now. So it's not just meeting needs, it's adding value to the marketplace. It's creating and making a difference and making lives better. So you see the depth of being an entrepreneur vis-a-vis a business person from being a professional versus an amateur. Well, perhaps one day we will have more opportunities for us to go into the nitty-gritty of the differences between a business person and an amateur. But right now, this is what I want to end with, and I'd like you to take this one home. There's a difference between work and a job. What's the difference? A job is something you do that you get paid for. That's it. That's why you get paid. You have a job. And so, when people come to me and say, I'd like to apply with your company, and I will ask them, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a job. Oh, is that it? You're looking for a job? Well, congratulations. You might find one. A tiny little itsy-bitsy yellow polka dot job that offers you a little payroll because that's all there is. You got to be paid for what you do, and that's it. And then, when crunch time comes, that is spelled COVID, with two numbers on it, 19. You wonder why you're let go. Because that's the only thing that you have, a job. And now jobs are scarce, aren't they? Now look at people with a professional mindset, with an entrepreneurial mindset. When you ask them, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for an opportunity to join an organization where I can grow, where I can learn, when I can make a positive contribution and make a difference. That's not just job. That's meaningful work. Now, what's the difference now between job and work? A job is something that you get paid for doing something. What is work? Work is expenditure of energy in adding value to someone or something who happens to be at the receiving end of it. Now, let me repeat that. Work is an expenditure of energy towards creating something of value to someone or something. And then, what's this now? You and I are expected to work, even though we don't have a job. Why? When God created you and me, we have been given work. And work is part of our DNA. That's why you will never be happy unless you are productive. So what's the difference now? Why did I say that we are expected to work even though we don't have a job? Because what did I say? Meaningful work means expenditure of energy in order to add value. Look at a mother. A mother doesn't have a job, but is she working? Yes. Is she adding value? Yes. Is that work meaningful? Yes. Now I hope you get it. An entrepreneur is involved in meaningful work. It's not just a job. It is something deeper in the philosophy of the person, knowing that what he or she does will add value, not only to society, but to the entrepreneur himself. And that's why we can scale new heights if we begin to leave the old amateur business mentality behind and graduate into meaningful work that is required of a professional called an entrepreneur. Enjoy your success journey. God bless you.